Welcome back to the Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Goldseth.
Do you like poetry?
I do. I really like poetry.
Me too. I'm not very good at it. Maybe I should learn more about poetry. And there's an opportunity to do that, especially for students this year. So excited to share this story with our listeners because lots of families will have unique new opportunities with school this year, whatever school might look like for you this year, and something cool to add to that school year. I think something fantastic, poetry. Joining us, who better to help us with that than one of our favorite poets, Tanner Olson, written to speak. Tanner, thanks for joining us in the Coffee Hour today.
Good morning. Good morning. How are y'all?
Doing
right.
well. Good to hear your voice. Good to hear your voice. I know that this has been a unique year for you as well. Probably plenty of time to write poetry this year, I gather.
Yes, a lot of time to write poetry and to kind of write my way through the last 6 months.
Yeah. So I saw that you are sharing poetry school
Yes.
with folks this year, and I want to know, what is poetry school?
Yeah, so Poetry School, it's an 11-day poetry curriculum for elementary, middle, and high school students. Poetry School, it includes 16 different videos of original poetry, and along with that comes a educational PDF guide, encouragement, and then at the end of the class, you have the opportunity to Zoom, Skype, FaceTime me, and do a live Q&A with your class once it's all complete. And this idea kind of came out of, well, like we talked about before we started recording, and we're not supposed to talk about COVID-19, but it's impacted so much of what's happening. And for me as a author and a poet and a speaker, the way that I lived and did my job was traveling to schools and churches and sharing poetry. And that no longer, well, I can't do that anymore. And so I thought, well, what is a way to continue to share poetry and to encourage students to write than through online resources? And so I came up with Poetry School.
That is one thing that has come up as we've talked to people over the last several months, that even though it's kind of been a weird time for a lot of people, there's also been some really great stuff that's come out of this need to adapt to this I don't even want to say new normal, just this way of life that we've had now. That this is a really cool opportunity for students to learn poetry now that we're all doing stuff differently. What are some of the good benefits of kids learning poetry?
We all know that words matter. In poetry, what it does is it allows us to slow down. It allows us to lean in, and it allows us to just dig a little bit deeper. And if we can learn to do that with poetry, then we can learn to do that with relationships, with the dreams that we have, and even with our faith as well, to slow down, to lean in, and to dig just a little bit deeper. And I also think that children and young adults, that they're the best poets and writers that we have. They just don't know it yet. And so through this course, through Poetry School, my hope is that they'll open up their eyes and they'll be able to see just a little bit that they have this skill, they have this ability, that they can sit down, that they can write, and they can kind of get out these thoughts and these emotions, and they can also use that for good and share that with our world to encourage them to move forward, to lean in, and to dig deeper.
So you mentioned earlier, this is for students elementary through high school. Is that right?
Yep, for 3rd to 12th grade. And I understand that that's a very big gap. It's a big gap. However, over the last year or so, visiting schools and stuff, I was able to share, poems with 3rd graders that I would share with 12th graders, and I would share poems that I shared with the 3rd graders with 12th graders as well, and it seemed to work. At least they seemed to nod along and to get it. And I think the power of words, what we can do is we can draw some things out of it, no matter what the age is, and we can either find inspiration, we can ask questions, or what the teacher or even the parent can do is say, "Hey, you've heard this poem. What stuck out to you? What do you think was behind this poem that we just listened to or watched?" And so I understand there's a huge gap, but also the PDF, what it does is it breaks it down for elementary school students and then middle school and high school students as well. So they'll have different questions and ways to look back on the poem and discover some new things through the questions asked specifically to that age group.
All right, so try it out on us. What's a typical lesson look like?
So the
I'm not
typical
very good
lesson,
at poetry.
you know what? I'm not very good at poetry either. It's just my job, right? Uh, I didn't go to school for poetry. I always enjoyed listening to it and writing it, and then I was like, well, maybe I can write it as well. And that's my hope for these students, is that they go through this class and they're like, you know what? I didn't think that I liked poetry, because they'll probably associate it to just love poems or Shakespeare, but it's so much more than that. And I think when we realize something is so much more than that, we can apply that to a lot of things in our lives as well. So what a day looks like in poetry school is students will watch a video of me sharing a poem, and after watching the video, they'll turn to their PDF guide and begin to work through that poem, and they'll be asked questions about the poem and then be encouraged to write their own. And my wife, who is a former elementary school student and teacher, she helped write this guide for me. And I got to tell you, she's brilliant. So it's really good. Like, she showed me some of the questions. She's like, "What do you think we can do for this one?" I was like, "Oh, that's really good. How did you come up with that?" And she goes, "This was my job." And I was like, "Oh, that's really good." And so yeah, so the kids, they'll listen to the poem, they'll watch the poem, and then they're encouraged to kind of dig deeper into that, and to kind of look into the writing process, pull out some different type of ways in which the poem was written, and then they'll be encouraged to write their own as well. And so our hope for this is that it can be a tool for parents and for teachers as well, to give to their students or their children and say, hey, let's spend some time with poetry today, and to get them to take the pen and put it to the paper. Because I think, in the last 6 months, I know it's been hard and heavy for us. And I can't imagine what it's like to be a third grader, a sixth grader, a ninth grader, and having all these things inside of our minds and these thoughts and not knowing what to do with it. And I think poetry is a great place to take the last 6 months and put it to the piece of paper and see what can come out.
Yeah, what is that more therapeutic side of writing? I mean, so often we hear about how writing in journals is a really beneficial thing. What is that beneficial therapeutic side of doing all of this?
A couple of things. First of all, the students will have a chance to see something different. And I know poetry is weird, poetry is different, but sometimes I think we need to lean into what is weird, into what is different. And I think that can teach us just a little, just can teach us something that can help us move forward. And I think, at least for myself, and this is why I'm such a big, I just want to encourage people to take the pen and to write some things down. But it's been so helpful for me. I know that in hard seasons and in times of uncertainty and difficulty, when I sit down to write a poem or even to write a prayer, I leave writing just feeling a lot better, more encouraged, a little less heavy. And I think in all of this, we need to be doing things to help ourselves to feel less heavy, less exhausted, less weighed down. And writing is one of those things that can help with that.
What is what's hard about poetry? What are when a student takes on one of these lessons, they're going to find that there are challenges to writing poetry. What is challenging for you when it comes to writing poetry?
What's challenging for me when it comes to writing poetry is I don't want to write something that someone has already written, and then in that same lane, I struggle to compare myself to other writers and poets, and I know, and even in this course, and I address it in a couple of videos, is you don't have to be like any other writer. You get to write the way that you want to write. You get to put down the words that you want to put down. And you don't have to be any other writer but yourself. Because this class, it's not for the audience. It is just for the individual, to help you to learn the ways of writing and the benefits of that. Yeah. So, and honestly, in the last 6 months, it's been a struggle for me to write, because I feel like all I'm writing about is like a response to COVID-19 in our current world. And in reality, what I really want to write about is something more upbeat and hopeful, and something that's going to make you smile rather than be like, oh yeah, that's true. This is what the last 6 months have felt like. But with that, I also think it's important for us to kind of narrate what's happening and what's taking place, and to kind of show a different side of that. So
Mhm.
that's what I view my job as a writer is to show you, kind of take what's happening in our world and to look at it from a different angle.
And speaking of writing things, you have a new book, don't you?
I do. Coming out on September 8th, I have a new book called As You Go, Words for the Unknown. It is over 100 short little poems, poems that you can take with you as you go into the unknown. So words that you can just stuff in your back pocket. And so I've been working hard on it the last couple of months. It wasn't supposed to come out until about November or December, but with all that's happening, we decided, hey, let's move it up and get it out there so people can use it as a tool and a resource and a source of encouragement during this uncertain season.
So, new book coming out in September. Hopefully, we can talk more about that coming up in September. How can we find Poetry School and other and your previous book and other works from Tanner Olson, Written to Speak?
Yeah, if you just visit writtentospeak.com, that's writtentospeak.com, you'll find everything there. There's only one Written to Speak, and it happens to be me. And so on there, you'll see a tab for Poetry School, and you'll also see a tab on there for a shop as well. And you can buy Poetry School in the shop or in my book as well. So yeah, that's where you can find everything about me. I also been writing more often. I am somebody who has not heard that blogging is no longer cool. So I still blog. I still post things on there. So you can find, if you're looking to kill a little bit of time and you're tired of being on Amazon, you can visit writtentospeak.com.
Blogging is no longer cool. I didn't know that either.
I'm trying to bring it back. I'm trying, it's hard, but I'm trying to bring it back.
Poetry School available from Written to Speak. Check out writtentospeak.com to find out more about it. That sounds like a fantastic way to learn poetry from a great poet. Tanner Olson, thanks for being our guest on the Coffee Hour today. Always great to catch up with you. Looking forward to your new book coming out as well in September.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
You're listening to the Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Golseth.
The Coffee Hour with Andy and Sarah is a production of KFUO. To support the Coffee Hour and KFUO Radio, visit KFUO.org. You can also text KFUO to 41444 or send an email to gifts@kfuo.org. And you can call us at 800-844-0524. KFUO. Christ for you, anytime, anywhere.